Hello everyone, it is me again with another tutorial. This time I'm gonna teach you how to use a really useful tool called AoE2ScenarioParser. And for this tutorial I have prepared a GitHub repository. You can check it out in the description. It contains all the details that you should read and install the AoE2ScenarioParser. Apart from that, you also need to check out the main repository of the AoE2ScenarioParser, and I will go into it for a bit because this is where you need to download the program itself. But first, I have prepared a virtual machine to install what we need for this video, starting from fresh, that is. And so first you just need to install Python from here, and I'll be sure to include all the links in the description. And so we will install the latest version. So once you launch the Python installer, you need to check all of this and click install now. And once you're done, click close. And once you're done, you need to restart your computer. And once you are restarted, you just need to check if your Python is installed or not. To do that, you need to hold the window key and press R to open the run menu and type cmd and click OK. And from there you just need to type py a space and 2 strike and version. And as you can see, the machine can detect the Python version from here. And so the next step, you need to install Pycharm, a tool where you can write your Python program. So you just need to search for it, and from this website you just need to download the community version. It's free. Just need to wait for it to be installed and we can proceed to the next step. There's also many IDE which you can work with Python, but Pycharm is the best, so I could recommend that for you. And once the setup is installed, you just need to click next. Choose the folder you need to put your Pycharm in, and after you've done that, just click next. From here you just need to create association, add some path to it. You can create a desktop shortcut or not, depends on your preference. Once you've done that, just click next and click install. And while we are waiting for Pycharm to install, you also need to go to AoE2ScenarioParser GitHub repository itself. And if you don't know how to install it, you can click on a tutorial about installing AoE2ScenarioParser here. There are 2 ways you can install this project. Either you can install the library using pip, or you can install it manually to your drive using git clone. But I recommend you use this pip method, because by that you can upgrade your ScenarioParser whenever there's an update easily. And so you just need to go back to command line and paste your method in there. And we will wait a while for it to download. Once Pycharm is completed downloading, they also ask for you to reboot your computer. So we will reboot our computer once ScenarioParser is installed. And when ScenarioParser is finished installing, we want to reboot our computer. And once your computer is restarted, you just need to open Pycharm, and then you're greeted with a user agreement dialog. You just need to accept it, and you can choose whether you can send some data to them or not. And once Pycharm is loaded, you are meted with this welcome to Pycharm, and they are asking and it's asking you to create a new project or open an existing one. For this, you just need to download my script example link in the description below, and it includes some nifty document if you need to understand how to work with the library. To download a project in GitHub, you just need to go to code and download zip, and it will return a zip file for you to download. And so you can go ahead and open your downloaded script now. For this, I have chosen my script to be in the desktop, but you can choose whichever directory you would like. And if you are using Pycharm for the first time, you need to wait for the background task to run for a while. And once it is done, you just need to right click on the editor and then click run the example. Given that you have the correct folder and the path setup for your script, and if the editor loaded the ScenarioParser successfully, it will return a successful message. And after the script runs successfully, there will be another successful message shown from here. If by any chance you cannot run your library, or if there's any problem, you need to go to File and go to Settings. From the Settings tab, you choose the Project and Project Interpreter, and in this menu you have to check your Python version and to check its downloaded library to see if there's any AoE2ScenarioParser library installed. If there isn't any on the package list, you need to check if your AoE2ScenarioParser library is downloaded, or you can add it manually by clicking on the plus button and then search the library name. By that case, AoE2ScenarioParser. Select that and click install package. And once it is done, you also need to click on the drop down list below and click on the edit configuration, and from this menu you need to check if your project is using the correct Python version or not. If there's happen to be many versions of Python installed in your computer, you need to check whether or not you're using the Python which has the AoE2ScenarioParser library in it. And for that, you click OK. And with the environment settings out of the way, now let's move on to examples of script that you can use in AoE2ScenarioParser. First, you need to check if the scenario folder strings is correct or not. Go to resource and common, and you open this scenario folder right here. Every scenario you created will be located in this folder. So first you need to create a scenario first. Right now I have already loaded into my editor, so I will save this scenario back into Pycharm again. Just put your correct scenario name in the input path, and the output path should be your scenario name plus parser result. And your scenario name will be read by the parser, provided that you have given the correct link to it. And I will introduce how the parser works in simple steps. But first, if you want the parser to work properly, you need to write some import first. So from here, you just need to copy the code link in the description. And also, apart from importing the AoE2ScenarioParser itself, it is recommended to also import some dataset used for many different things, such as importing unit IDs, class and triggers IDs and attributes, etc. After you're done with import and done with your scenario part declaration. You can go ahead and declare a scenario class by writing AoE2ScenarioParser imported from the import right here, and dot from file input path and the source trigger manager will be our trigger manager, and this thing will work with all of your trigger functions. Once you're done writing the code and changes to your scenario, you can go ahead and declare source scenario and write the write to file functions and put the output path into the function itself, and the output path should be here. So we can go over to some example now, and from here we already got our template, so we can write our code from here. This is a simple example of how you can mass create triggers, with all the functions will be explained in the main ScenarioParser libraries and documentations, so you can click the link to find more about them. So for our first example here, I need to introduce, for those who are new to programming, how a loop iteration works. So in Python you can create a loop iteration to run lines of code on loop for a certain number of times, and this is one of many different examples. There are many functions such as switch case to check if multiple conditions match something, or if else statements, but for a little example here, to loop a block of code you need to write for and then the trigger ID in range of 0. 0 is the starting index, which means the starting index of trigger ID will be 0, and for each loop iteration like this it will increase trigger ID by 1, and the function will loop until trigger ID reach 9999. And to create a new trigger you need to declare an object, and then source trigger manager use the add trigger function and write your trigger name inside here, and you can choose to have it enabled or loop or not. But there are many different properties in a trigger, so you can go ahead and write some more if you want. You can hold Control and press on space to display a suggestion box like this, and from suggestion box you can see how many attributes you can add into within this bracket of the function add trigger. So here you can see you can even put a list of effects on it, or you can put description on it, etc, etc, but I will leave it here for now. So move on to the second trigger. It create a test trigger, and the trigger name will be its trigger ID. The ID of trigger 0 is taken, and we increase 1 to it, and you can add new effect and condition by using the new effect and condition effect. Trigger 2 is basically the same, but we have some new condition effect like on object. By this way a message will appear if player 1 has a villager on the map. It's pretty self-explanatory, so we can go ahead and click right on the Python editor and click run, and the Python file will run and take the parser library into its account. We just need to wait for it to complete, and once the file is written successfully, there will be a successful message, and you can go ahead and load into your newly created scenario. And once the project is loaded, as you can see in the trigger panel, a lot of triggers are being created at the same time and in a neatly and tidy manner, and it is really useful to create a mass of trigger block like this when you just need to write a couple of lines of codes without needing to think about much, and without the effort of editing each triggers for repetitive tasks. And for this example, you just need to run it. And the send chat trigger will basically show the message for 10,000 times, as you can see in the left corner. So we can call our experiment successful, and the block of triggers have been written for 10,000 times. And we will move on into our next example. Is to how to copy an existing trigger in a scenario and modify them to your need. So similar to last time, you need to create a base scenario first. For this example, I have created a basic trigger like this. So for a couple of times, for 5 seconds in this condition, we'll create a simple king unit in this corner, and we're just gonna announce his presence like this. A fat king has arrived, this message, and task him forward into this location. With a basic example like this, you can write a script to it, and from the script section, first you need to copy the trigger first, and for that you need to declare your source trigger manager object and take the trigger list out of there. And so trigger list will be like this, dot triggers, that will be a list, and to take the first object from the list of objects, you need to write a square bracket like this and put a 0 to it, and 0 indicate the first index in a list of objects. And into trigger source, we need to create an effect to it by adding a new effect function, and the new effect will be activate triggers, and the trigger ID should be our trigger source right here with its trigger ID and +1 to it. That'll be the position of the newly copied triggers. And we can declare our trigger and we can declare our trigger copy like this. Just basically this trigger manager and use the copy trigger function. And inside the copy trigger bracket, we need to specify the trigger select attribute to equals to our trigger source ID right here. So once we copy the trigger source, we set our trigger copy attribute enabled to false, since the first trigger will activate the second triggers, so we don't need it to be active. You can edit an existing trigger condition by the get condition and get effect functions. From this trigger copy, getting the condition 0 would be the first condition indicated with the number 0, and so it's getting in the effect 0, it would be this effect, and it would change the source player from player 1 to player 2. And the second effect with ID 1 will have a different message, and it will display a message in red instead of blue. And the second effect will change the source player of the effect, so the player 2 king can walk toward into this location. And lastly, we just need to remove the activate triggers we have added from here at the position 3 in the effect list of the trigger. And once the script finished successfully, you just need into your newly created scenario and check the trigger. There will be a new trigger with a copy in brackets, and you can see the newly created king will be player 2 instead of player 1, and all the other stuff have been modified, so we can just test it. And from here we can see a player 1 king going out, and the imposter king, I call it And I call the player 2 king to be imposter king, and he finally run out of the area. And so here's a bonus example for you all. Let's say if we combine the first example, the iteration loop, and the second example, copy triggers into together, and this turn into an example of how a trigger or several triggers can be copied and have the effect and condition of the players change, so that it results in new triggers being created, catering to player number 1 to player 8. And this is pretty useful for creating multiplayer maps. And I'm just gonna show you the result of this script. And here comes player 1 king. That's the original trigger. And an imposter king of player 1. Another imposter king of player 2. And it's just gonna go to 3 and so on. And so that's the example I have given you, which is pretty neat. And for the final one, I'm just gonna show you how ScenarioParser helped me in the process of creating my RPG scenario. It's still a work in progress, but I've made great progress with this project so far. I declare a bunch of different Python class to have different data stored. For example, like characters and equipment. So for the RPG map I'm having, a character can equip multiple equipment at once, and it's being implemented throughout all characters. Every time I run my script, I want to clear the old script, previous generated triggers as well. So, and this is where the script start to add triggers, and basically it's gonna run and modify all the equipment stat and character stat, and starting to add some effect to it. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff, and so I'm just gonna show you some of the gameplay. So this is the current build of the map. As you can see, it's an RPG where you can control not multiple characters at once, but you choose which unit to be your control unit, and you can switch between different characters, different skills and stuff. And there's like an equipment menu where you can equip different items to your character.
Que fait? Qu'il y a?
Watch carefully.
Bonjour.
AoE, Oilrax, Oil, Lipet, Perax, Oil, Liperax, certes, Oil, certes, Perax,
Qu'il y a? À la bataille.
Watch and learn.
Bonjour. Certes. Libé. Oh yeah. Certes. Libé. Oh yeah. Certes.
So that is it for the video. If you made it throughout this video, congratulations, you learned a very useful tool today. And if you have any question, feel free to comment down below, or you can join the ScenarioParser Discord to get your question answered by an admin. And I have to say, the dev working on this tool update the tool regularly, so you can expect your Parser project to run just fine. And let me know if you want me to make more videos specifically catering to ScenarioParser tutorial, and I will see you in the next video.